What is the price of loyalty, measured in years of devotion, or the single agonizing heartbeat it takes to walk away? The damp, gray tarmac of the sprawling airport smells heavily of cold rain and the sharp tang of jet fuel. A massive white and blue Il-18 turboprop aircraft sits idly, its propellers spinning with a deafening hum of impending departure. Richard stands near the boarding stairs, his gray windbreaker whipping in the fierce wind as cold sweat beads on his forehead. His career is a fragile thread keeping him from ruin. But the airline's cruel bureaucracy has demanded he abandon his dog. With hands trembling uncontrollably, the desperate man unlatches the heavy metal gate of a wooden travel crate resting on the wet asphalt. Daisy steps out cautiously, a purebred German shepherd with expressive amber eyes that immediately seek out her master for reassurance. Richard drops to his knees, his beige tie brushing the wet ground as he cradles Daisy's face in his shaking hands. He offers a silent, heartbreaking apology through tear-filled eyes, but Daisy only wags her tail, sensing his anxiety but trusting him completely. The cold reality of his choice crushes him, so he reaches into his pocket and pulls out her favorite red rubber ball. Daisy's posture instantly transforms from anxious to purely joyful, her right ear twitching as she readies herself for the familiar game. With a choked sob, Richard hurls the textured red ball across the vast, desolate runway as hard as he possibly can. Daisy launches herself after it like a bullet, her powerful muscles rippling under her thick black and tan coat as she runs. The moment she turns her back, Richard sprints toward the boarding stairs, his face pale and etched with soul-crushing agony. He scrambles up the metal steps without looking back, frantic to escape the devastating crime of betrayal he is currently committing. Far across the tarmac, Daisy's jaws snap around the red ball, but she abruptly stops mid-stride as a chilling silence falls. She turns around, the ball dropping from her mouth, her amber eyes widening in sheer terror as she watches Richard disappear. The heavy cabin door slams shut with a terrifying finality, sealing the broken man inside the rumbling belly of the plane. Daisy lets out a piercing, high-pitched whine of abandonment that echoes helplessly against the thunderous roar of the four jet engines. The aircraft begins to taxi, and Daisy breaks into a full-speed gallop, desperately chasing her disappearing world down the runway. Days bleed into endless, torturous nights as the relentless airport rain washes away the scent of the man Daisy loved more than life. She transforms from a pampered companion into a vigilant, heartbroken stray, finding hollow refuge near the grassy edge of the airfield. An old, peeling forest green biplane becomes her only shelter, its rusted wings offering a meager canopy against the cold, unforgiving downpours. Her thick black and tan coat grows matted and dusty from sleeping on the damp earth beneath the tattered canvas tarp. Every time a turboprop engine roars in the distance, her weary amber eyes brighten with a fragile, tragic hope that quickly fades. She refuses the scraps of food offered by sympathetic ground workers, keeping her vigil permanently fixed on the empty runway horizon. But Daisy is not the only invisible ghost haunting the sprawling, mechanical labyrinth of this bustling international transit hub. Inside a faded yellow airport transfer bus, a young boy named Finn presses his pale face against the rain-streaked window glass. Finn wears an oversized, heavy-knit sweater with a bold geometric pattern in deep burgundy and earthy brown, feeling utterly alone. He is a lonely soul, permanently anchored in a world where everyone else is taking off to exciting, distant destinations. Through the smudged window, Finn's wise, older-than-his-years gaze locks on to the solitary German shepherd pacing along the distant chain-link fence. In the dog's drooping posture and profound isolation, the young boy instantly sees a perfect, heartbreaking reflection of his own soul. As the transfer bus idles near the forgotten hangars, Finn secretly slides open the window and climbs out into the crisp evening air. His deep red and brown sweater stands out like a beacon of warmth against the cold, monochromatic gloom of the dying daylight. He approaches the overgrown grass slowly, keeping his small hands completely open and visible to show the frightened animal he means no harm. Daisy's survival instincts flare instantly. Her hackles rise, and she lets out a low defensive growl born from trauma and shattered trust. Instead of running away, Finn simply sits down on the wet grass a few feet away, mirroring her cautious, fearful posture. He pulls a small crumpled piece of bread from his faded dark blue jeans and extends his trembling, pale hand toward her. The scent of fear is absent from the boy. Daisy sniffs the air, detecting only an overwhelming, gentle wave of pure, innocent empathy. Step by agonizing step, the broken dog closes the distance, gently taking the bread as their fingers and fur brush for the first time. The broken pieces of their hearts begin to knit together as they find sanctuary inside a massive, cavernous metal hangar, away from the cold. They huddle together tightly on a pile of old wool blankets, illuminated by a single warm tungsten light bulb that isolates them from the dark. Daisy rests her heavy head affectionately against Finn's chest, her breathing finally slowing to match the steady rhythm of the young boy's heartbeat. But the airport is a relentless machine of strict rules, and a stray dog living among the hangars is considered a dangerous liability. The fragile piece shatters at dawn when a group of ground crew workers, armed with thick capture poles and heavy ropes, corner the dog. Daisy plants her paws firmly on the damp concrete, refusing to cower as she places her large body protectively between the aggressive men and Finn. She bares her teeth in a fierce, human-like display of defiance, letting out a sharp, booming growl that echoes off the rusted hangars. The men close in rapidly, their faces strained with the physical effort of trying to contain the wild, desperate energy of the frightened animal. Daisy dodges a swinging capture pole with incredible agility, her movements frantic as she desperately fights to stay by the boy's side. But there are simply too many of them, and a thick, rough rope is suddenly looped tightly around her thick neck, pulling her backward. Panic, absolute and blinding, seizes the dog as her eyes roll back in terror, her fierce barks morphing into ragged, desperate yelps. Finn screams in pure agony, his voice cracking as he watches two large men forcefully hoist the thrashing German Shepherd completely off the ground. They throw her violently into the dark, suffocating confines of a rusted green transport truck, slamming the heavy metal doors shut with a terrifying bang. As the engine roars to life and the truck kicks up a massive cloud of dust, Finn breaks into a dead run across the vast tarmac. Tears stream uncontrollably down his pale, freckled face, blurring his vision as his small legs pump furiously to catch the departing vehicle. He trips over a wide crack in the unforgiving asphalt and falls hard, scraping his knees raw through his faded dark blue jeans. Lying on the cold ground, his bright sweater stained with dark dirt, Finn's face contorts into a mask of pure, unfiltered heartbreak. Inside the moving truck, Daisy refuses to be abandoned again, clawing frantically at the small, rain-streaked window, separating her from freedom. She squeezes her head fiercely through a narrow gap in the broken glass, letting out a mournful howl into the rushing, freezing wind. With a massive surge of adrenaline, Daisy leaps blindly from the moving vehicle into the dark, tumbling violently into the tall grass. Battered and bruised from the violent tumble into the wet grass, Daisy struggles to her paws, her survival instinct roaring back to life. Driven by an unbreakable bond, she sprints relentlessly through the cold, driving rain, navigating miles of dark roads to find her way back. Meanwhile, at the forgotten edge of the airfield, a heartbroken Finn clutches Daisy's chewed red rubber ball tightly against his chest. He stands in the damp night air, his deep red and brown sweater heavy with mist, staring hopelessly into the empty, unforgiving darkness. Suddenly, a familiar shadow emerges from the swirling fog, moving with an exhausted but determined limp toward the dim glow of the hangars. Daisy's amber eyes lock onto the boy, and her matted, mud-soaked body begins to shake violently with sheer, unadulterated joy. Finn drops the red ball and falls to his knees, throwing his arms open wide as the massive German Shepherd crashes into his embrace. He buries his tear-streaked face deep into her wet, thick fur, the two outcasts finally reunited in an unbreakable, silent pact. But the fragile peace is interrupted by the deafening roar of a landing turboprop plane, casting harsh white lights across the wet tarmac. The heavy cabin door opens, and Richard steps out onto the rusted metal stairs, his gray windbreaker looking more worn and desperate than before. He scans the dimly lit airfield with a hopeful gaze, searching frantically through the mist for the loyal friend he was forced to betray. Daisy lets out a sharp, recognizing bark, her ears perking up instantly as she spots her former master standing in the cold night. Richard drops to his knees with trembling hands, opening his arms wide as tears of profound regret stream down his deeply lined face. Daisy takes one hesitant step forward, but then she stops, looking up at the young boy in the burgundy sweater standing closely beside her. She turns her body, pressing her heavy head firmly against Finn's leg, making her absolute, soul-binding choice undeniably clear. Richard watches the profound connection between the lonely boy and the devoted dog, his heart shattering as he realizes he only holds her past. With a humble, tearful nod of surrender, the broken man slowly pulls his empty hands back, accepting the devastating price of his departure. He turns and walks back into the shadows of the plane, leaving Daisy to the only person who truly saw her when everyone else flew away. As morning breaks, the warm sun pierces the heavy clouds, casting a golden glow over Finn and his fiercely loyal German shepherd walking together. Home is never simply a place on a map. It is the person who firmly stays by your side when the rest of the world leaves.